I'm very private. I've never had crews within our home. It's a very safe space, but I have to, or choose to believe that if James knew that doing this could help families and could help other children and young adults who live with special needs, James would say, "Dad, what are you talking about? Why are you even asking me? It's a no-brainer." James was a very silent baby. He didn't coo, he didn't make any sounds at all. I just thought I'd hit the lottery, I thought I'd have a chill child who's not going to keep me up at night. He'd cry if he was upset, but more than the crying, it was just the constant adaptation to the idea of sound and encroaching language that a child goes through as a course of their natural evolution. And there was none of that. But I didn't know that at the time. As I said, I thought he was just a chill baby, and anything but chill. You can hear him. But then he didn't. Yeah, he just wasn't hitting benchmarks. He wasn't sitting up. He couldn't sit up. You'd sit him up, and he'd and fall over. He wasn't crawling. He couldn't stay up on his legs at all. So we knew that something was up. Developmental delays. I think he was a year and a half old, maybe, when he was diagnosed. We took him to get really checked out, and because of certain things that he was displaying, he was diagnosed as having cerebral palsy. And it was at the time, it probably still is, but in less measure, it was a common misdiagnosis because it shared a lot of the same presentations, a lot of the same characteristics. And it wasn't until he was about 2.5 years old that another doctor, pediatric neurologist, spent a little bit of time with him and saw that James, one of the characteristics of Angelman syndrome is outbreaks of laughter. They call it inappropriate outbreaks of laughter, but I don't know if there is such a thing as inappropriate outbreak of laughter if it comes from a sincere place, and it lacks malice. I've just obviously qualified it greatly, so maybe there is, but the doctor saw that James was laughing a lot in the office, and he was also doing this movement a lot with his hands. But this pediatric neurologist took a look at James and said to James's mom, "Has he been tested for Angelman syndrome?" And Kim said, what's that? Very few people knew about it at the time, and the doctor said, "Well, let me just do a genetic test, a blood test. We can just do a genetic mapping and we'll see." And it came back positive. So at least we had one of the biggest things, obviously one of the biggest issues, and one of the most significant moments you can experience as a child who has developmental disability or delay is getting a diagnosis. Because then if you get a diagnosis, you can zero in. There are usually people you can find, whether it's a community just emotionally to lean into, so you feel less alone in your struggles, or medical professionals who can actually, and physical therapists who can actually, and people who can have a specific system with which they can present to your child, present to you, and then help your child reach their potential. So getting the diagnosis, I remember the first 2 questions I asked at the time were, what's the life expectancy and how much pain is involved? And the doctor said life expectancy, as far as we can tell, is the same for you and for me, and pain, no, but it's a seizure condition. That was one of the big things, and it's one of the things that parents struggle with greatly, is that our children with Angelmans have seizures. James had plenty of seizures back in the day. I've been in the back of ambulances, I've been in the hospital with him. Thankfully he hasn't had one in 10 or 11 years, which is amazing. My God, James's first steps, I'll never forget James's first steps. 2 weeks short of his 4th birthday. 2 weeks short of his 4th birthday. And we were in the house we lived in at the time, and Deborah, who's amazing, who was here yesterday. I mean, James's team, as I say, they've been in his life for 18 years. They love him so much. Deborah came upstairs, and I knew that they were working on walking, and she came upstairs and she said, "James has something to show you." And she said, "Go over there," and I stood over there, and she had him, and she let him go, and he just came. It was so profound. I mean, it was magic. I mean, I'll never forget, and there's the face of determination on him as he just walked towards me, and he took like 6 steps, and I burst into tears. It was amazing, he's just short of his 4th birthday. Because a lot of parents are told, your child's probably not going to walk, and there are many children and young adults with Angelman syndrome who are wheelchair bound, and there are other children you'll see who run around as if there wasn't a single, chromosomal issue in their body at all, and James is somewhere kind of in the middle of that field. But yeah, that was, if you're First steps are always a significant thing. They're spoken about, a father or a mother misses the first steps, they're pissed off for the rest of their lives. It's a really, really powerful benchmark, for us bipedal creatures, and to be told that he may never walk and see those first steps was just, I'll never forget it. It was so overwhelmingly beautiful. A typical day with James, not working, we'll just hang out, we'll play ball, swim in the pool. He loves movies, we'll watch movies, go out and get a cheeseburger. He loves his In-N-Out burgers. He spends a lot of time with his partner in crime, slash carer, slash buddy, slash person, Damon, who, because I work, I've had another point of my good fortune. I've had live-in care, so, I can move freely and work, and I think it's also been great for James because it gives him, again, that autonomy. He knows I'm here. We love-ins and cuddles all day long, and then he goes out and he goes to the beach and he goes to Universal Studios, and he's a good life, James. Yeah, he's a happy young man, I'm glad to say. I'm proud of him every day because I just think he's magic. Do you know what I mean? I'm proud of both my boys. I've been blessed to have two really, really fine young men in my charge. I'm not even joking. Every day I just think they're just magic, both of them. I just adore them, and I'm just proud of the kind of fellas they are. And I don't want to be willy-nilly if anyone's watching this and just like, oh, everything my children does is perfect, and I just tell them they're perfect all the time. No, we have raging arguments here. We have disagreements, and there's stuff that happens that's not cool, and I say it's not cool, and I try and give context for why I think it's not cool. But not that regularly. They're just really good dudes. I have two really good dudes, and yeah, James is, he works harder than I've ever had to work on myself. Like he really does. Take James sometimes 90 seconds to take a t-shirt off, but he can take the t-shirt off, but you sit it out with him. His socks, that's a whole thing. All these things are huge, huge achievements. And so if anything, he also gifts me with the ability to look at the human being and the human body and life as a marvel, because I see how much he struggles with things that I would never have given a second's thought to, that I would just, like many of us, take for granted, What would I say I'm most grateful for? I think I'll steal Jamie Lee Curtis's answer and say my sobriety, in a way. Everything is magnified when you have a child with special needs. You're even more aware that your child really needs you around and is going to need a lot of help and a lot of support. So James was about 2 when I got clean, when I got sober, and he was a big, big part of me putting the bottle down. A big part of it, because I was in no condition to be a friend, never mind a father of a child with such exacting needs. And so, if it wasn't for my sobriety, I wouldn't be able to be there for James and enjoy in the marvel of his life and support him in the way that I feel that I can. I don't want to paint a picture either that I'm a perfect dad. I make up left, right, and center, but at least you have to be present to up. So I'm around, but yeah, it's neck and neck, and they're kind of very conjoined. My sobriety, and then obviously the two children that I have, James and Henry, are the two greatest, I won't say prides of my life, because pride's a funny one, but I just, they are the aspects of my life and the presences within my life that I'm most grateful for. For years I've wanted to do something in the realm of providing greater opportunities for families who have a child with special needs to receive the support that they deserve to receive, and basically the assistance in life, in all areas of life, whether it's education, whether it's intervention, therapeutics, social environments that their child can feel like they belong within. And just so that families who have a child with special needs can find a world of meaning and a life of connection for their children, I obviously have a certain amount of means, having had a career in film for 20 plus years now. And we still struggle with finding the kind of support that James deserves and should rightfully have, and particularly up until there are support systems in place across the country, and it varies state to state, but once your child turns 21, they're kind of on their own. All the safeguards that are put in place, all the inclusive programs, special ed classes, that all kind of goes away once your child is 21, and so you're left with a young adult who should be an integrated part of our modern society here, and very much more often than not is left behind. And so families struggle. And so James is of an age now, I suppose the reason why we're establishing the foundation now is that James is of an age, he's 20. He's had an extraordinary 20 years. He works incredibly hard to achieve the most, quote unquote, menial of things, the most typical of things, benchmarks that we all experience as typical human beings who don't have any cognitive issues or developmental delays. James has fought very hard to achieve certain benchmarks, and he's done incredible, and he's a really well-adjusted, really happy young man. He's extraordinary. But now we're looking towards the rest of his life. What's the next chapter of James's life look like? Because my fear would be, God forbid, if and when something happens to James's mother or to me, that James would be 30 and 40, and then he would have to go in somewhere into some kind of institute or some kind of residential care at 30 and 40, and there'd be nobody there to call over and to take him out and to have lunch and all that. So, but there's very, very few places, and so I want to change that. I want to be a part of, with a great team we have behind this foundation already, particularly Paula Evans out of Chicago, who's been a friend of mine for 15 years. She's just got an engine like you wouldn't believe, and she is she's on the board as well. So we're just, over time, I don't know, it's early days, like this is the first time I've spoken about it, and obviously the only reason I'm speaking about it is I can't ask James if he wants to do this. I can't ask my son. I have to make a decision call based on knowing James's spirit and knowing what kind of young man he is, and the kind of goodness that he has in his heart. And he's bold as brass as well, and he's cheeky as they come, but he's just a damn fine young man. And hopefully over time, over the years, I hope, through funding and through community involvement, we want to take a good look at residential potential for families with young adults who are ready to go out into the world and have a greater sense of community and connection. My initial dream was to create a camp, something in the vein of what beautiful Paul Newman did, and Paul's camp, the Hole in the Wall gang, that's self-generating now as far as budget and finance goes, because he made those lovely pasta sauces and those microwave popcorns and things. So I had an idea for a camp that would, it would open in the spring, and it would operate in the spring and the summer and the fall, and then it would close for the winter for repairs. In my mind's eye, I see anywhere between 30 and 80 acres. There would be freestanding chalets, there would be outdoor cinema screen, there would be a rec room, there would be a swimming pool outside. There would be a couple of little freestanding wooden massage huts that the parents could go, and they could have a little bit of R&R. Parents of children with special needs, they find it hard to do nice things for themselves. And you can guess why. They feel that they just need to it's so all-encompassing. It's all-encompassing being a parent of a typical child, but to have a child who has such profound struggles as many of our children do, it's so all-encompassing that if you do something nice for yourself, or give yourself a massage, or go on a little 2-day road trip with your husband or your wife, you feel like you're being irresponsible. You feel like you're neglecting your child more than if you had a typical child. It's just the way it goes, because your child's needs are so pronounced, and because you feel a sense of guilt as well. It's very complicated, like that you brought your child into the world, that somehow it's your fault that your child was born with whatever the particular condition may be. And so the thing would be to bring parents and the children, both the child with special needs and 1 or 2 typical children, brothers, sisters, and bring them all to the camp for a week, so that the parents could have a good time. They could get massages, they could splash about, they could sit in the jacuzzi, and their child would be doing activities during the day, and then at night we'd all come together and there'd be meals shared, and there'd be cinemas out under the stars and all that kind of stuff. So that was initially what I spoke to Paula about, and then Paula was the one that said, well, do you think it's time to do the foundation? So building a summer camp will be a part of the foundation as well. That'll be a big one for me to leave behind, and it's all because of James, it's all in James's honor. It's a terrifying thought that I'll miss the last, 40 years or 50 years of his life. Just because I won't be there to shepherd and to to protect. But what would the perfect, just a life of connection. And so James's last 20, 30, 40, 10 years of James's life, he'll be somewhere where he feels like he belongs, where he feels like he's safe, and where he can garden and watch movies and swim in the pool and go out to the beach and just have a full and meaningful and connected life. That'll be the dream.